When I just started Zoom, everything like freaked out for a second. Let's see if we're still going. I think we're still going. No, we started the stream over again.
Started what stream?
Our stream. Zoom. That was awesome. So guys, did the stream go down for you guys or not, or is it still going? Just want to know. Are you guys back? It's a fresh feed.
Fresh feed.
Wow, that totally sucks. So just so all of you know, that was Zoom. Zoom just I was
sorry,
starting
Jessica.
I was starting Zoom.
I'm sorry.
Man, talk about a kick in the teeth. This whole Zoom thing.
I'm sorry, you guys. You guys missed us for a bit, but
We'll give you guys all a minute to get back on. That was some horse stuff.
Yeah, part 2, Rayanne. You're right. That's the way to turn a negative into a positive. We just on part 2.
We got a few of you back so far. We appreciate you guys coming back. It went down because I started Zoom. For all of you that are still coming back right now.
The earth is flat and the birds are spy cameras. Nice. I'm glad you think that, my brother. Because you know, I've never seen a baby pigeon. If you guys have ever seen a baby pigeon before, nope. You see a lot of people with pigeons and all these pigeon coops, but you'll never see a baby pigeon. Why is that?
So thanks for some of you for coming back on, including you folks out on Twitch. We appreciate you guys. By the way, whatever you do on Twitch to follow us, do that. Because we come on live every day for you, those of you on Twitch. For one of you on Twitch right now.
No, it's not your phone, Jessica B.
No, it was us. Thank you for those of you that are coming back on. We can see you coming back on. We appreciate it. That was me starting Zoom, and Zoom just like took over.
Scott, you just made that up, Scott. You ain't never raced a pigeon.
So for those of you
how
out
fast
there
do they fly?
For those of you out there that do streaming, don't start.
Jessica B, don't vouch for
in the
him.
middle of stuff.
Don't vouch for him, Jessica. Once you get a voucher, then it becomes true. We trying to stick to the theory that birds are spy cameras.
Too much pics on Twitch. Invite some of your buddies in to help us. And Jay Trentholm, if you're back on, get back on Twitch for us. That'll help. And dude on Twitch, we appreciate you coming right back on.
Ooh.
That was cool. And we're seeing a lot of you spin back on. Thank you for joining us. Back.
Damn, 70 miles an hour. That's fast.
That was some. So too much pics. Eric is actually about to start his own gaming channel in the next week or two. I don't think he plays League of Legends, but you play some other stuff, and you can he'll be on Twitch a whole bunch.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna play League of Legends if you gonna watch.
Yeah, he's into a bunch of stuff, and he's just getting into it.
Sheila.
He's just getting into it. So,
what does a baby pigeon look like, Scott? I ain't never seen one. I need to see a picture. And I ain't never seen no baby crow neither. Dang, Jessica, for real? It was in a base. Dang, why you do that, Scott? Why you do that to Jessica? In a basement full of pigeons. That sound real sketch. JT, what it do, man?
Hi guys.
Hey, Mark. Give us just a couple of minutes, okay?
Sure.
All right. So, but Mark, I'm glad I got you on. Mark, can you see me, by the way?
Uh-oh, y'all ready? I hope
No, I
y'all ready.
can't see anything.
No, I can't see you yet.
Let me try this. Hang on.
That's great.
Hey, Scott, I'm not gonna lie. I can't wait to get a fish tank from you, though. I'm excited.
You see me?
I do want to fish. I love fish. I had a huge 125 tank. I had to show you a picture of it. It was dope.
So, Mark, actually, we've been live. We were live for like the last hour, and so
What's
very
up, Mark?
Hi.
very interesting. And we're gonna get you on screen in just a moment. It was interesting because I started Zoom sort of in the background while we were going, and Zoom totally popped us off the internet for like a minute, and the stream started right back up. So we actually got almost everyone. We can tell from the viewer count that everyone's back up and watching. But it was interesting, just a little interesting note that Zoom like took over my computer for a second and just popped us off the air. Give me just a second. I'm gonna get you here.
Sure.
I'm gonna get you here on camera.
Am I zoomed in like really far? Hang on.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great.
Just fine. Let me make sure I've got a camera setting thing here. If I do that, that's probably a little better.
And I got to tell you, Mark, everyone's been very excited in the chat for you to come on.
Yeah, everybody is definitely getting their smokes and drinks ready for this.
Oh yeah, this topic will do that.
Yeah. And actually, you definitely already have a few supporters.
George calling you out
in the audience. We've
he
actually
said this
had.
is very unprofessional, Mike.
And I haven't even really told anybody I was going to be here.
Yeah. Well, we've got some folks on Twitch, and we have some folks on. We have some folks right now on Facebook. So, Mark, we have you up right now, and you're live, and everyone can see you.
There.
This is Mark the Flat Earther.
Well, so Mark,
shout out to my guy.
Mark is actually a flat Earth recruiter.
And
Mark, welcome.
Recruiter, yes.
Welcome.
Well, I mean, but I am also a flat earther, but yes.
So
you're gonna get at least one person out of this.
Yeah, actually, we could already tell in the comments, Mark, that like there's folks that they're already starting to self-convince even.
Somebody in the comments said lots of flat Earth fans all around the globe.
Yeah, heard that one back in 2015. It's a good one.
So Mark, can you tell us a little bit about your background and maybe how you maybe first got interested in this, and just give us a little history around it.
I got into this back in the summer of 2014 out of conspiracy boredom, really, more than anything. Meaning I had an opinion on I still do, on just about every conspiracy you could think of. And this was just sitting there in front of me going, the whole flat earth concept is like, I don't want to look at this. This is stupid. This is really dumb. But I was getting older. And so I thought, you know what? It's on my bucket list of things to do is to learn as much as I can. So I looked at it and said, I can stomp this thing out in a weekend. And then 9 months later, I was in real trouble. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't prove the globe anymore. Could not prove it in a court of law. So I made a series of videos at the beginning of 2015, February 10th, actually, at 3 o'clock in the morning, and made my first video and just put it out there with my name and my address and everything, all my personal information. I said, look, get a hold of me if you think I'm wrong. And thought that somebody would shoot it down almost immediately, and they didn't. And over the period of the next 6-8 months, I had so many people contacting me. Not just media and the general public, but subject matter experts. That's the part that really threw me, was just about every member of the armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, air traffic controllers, engineers, pilots. They all started contacting me and said, yeah, you know what? It's not that crazy. Here's why. And it just kept snowballing from there. And then every year something weird happened to spike it, to make it even weirder. So like the beginning of 2016, we had rapper B.O.B. make that song against Neil deGrasse Tyson called Flatline, which was really, really interesting. And then in 2017, Kyrie Irving comes out. And 2018, the documentary came out. It just kept getting weirder and weirder to where now, I mean, last year I did conferences in 7 countries on this, and there were so many regional meetups that I couldn't even begin to attend them all. But it was just wild. I mean, I did a freaking television commercial in Australia out of this. Just for a mobile phone app called the campaign was called Foolproof. And it's like, well, if you can, if Mark can understand flat Earth, you can understand our app. It's like, okay, it sounds fine to me as long as I get to see flat Earth on camera.
That's amazing. And so now that sort of, now that we've got the coronavirus and the pandemic and stuff,
Yeah.
how has that affected how, obviously you were going to conventions and meetups and doing traveling and stuff. So how has that affected all of that for you?
Oh, well, obviously the convention, nobody's doing any conventions anymore right now. And we have done some regional meetups, which was neat. I haven't gone to any because they haven't been that close, but some people have done regional meetups because if you're you're into flat Earth, you're probably into a lot of conspiracies. And most of the conspiracy world, from what I can tell, kind of feels the same way I do, which is I think the virus is overhyped. I mean, yeah, fine, it may be real, but the numbers are abysmally low for, not that we should get into it, but for being month 4, we're in the middle of April. No, there's something else. In fact, I've been talking about it for the last month, which is, it seems like there's another shoe's going to drop here, which is I call it the event. Something big is following this thing. It's not about the virus. It's never been about the virus. It's about you being home. But, I'm sorry, back to the, other than me not going to the conferences, I've had a real uptick in emails and personal correspondence because since a lot more people are home, a lot more people are getting into conspiracies because why not? It's like, how much can you watch Netflix before you get into YouTube? And that's where most of the conspiracy world lives right now.
Right. So Mark, for some folks out there, because some of the initial questions that we were getting, maybe you, and I'm going to try to bring up some pictures here, but maybe you can explain sort of
Sure.
the basic concepts around the flat Earth ideology, if
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the right way to put it.
Sure. Did you want to bring up pictures? Or you want me to just describe the flat Earth ideology?
You can start describing it, and I'll bring up some pictures for you.
Yeah. So what we're talking about here is that the Earth is not some little ball covered with water and smoke that's flying through space at an impossible velocity and basically an impossible universe. You're living in something very, very small. It's small and big at the same time. Big to us. You're living in a building with walls and a floor and a ceiling. And there's what's outside of it we don't know, but this thing is so large that even our best and brightest, and by that I mean the United States and the Soviet Union, didn't even figure it out until about 1960. And when they did, they decided to just keep a lid on it, a little play on words there, and not tell anybody for as long as humanly possible. And that's all they did was, they created a fake space program, multiple fake space programs, and sealed off the upper edge and the outer edge. So the upper edge the space was militarized, and the outer edge is sealed off by the Antarctic Treaty. And for those of you who don't know, the Antarctic Treaty, which was ratified in 1959, says that no company from any country anywhere can set up shop there forever, for any reason whatsoever. And it's mind-boggling because we can, especially in the States, we live on greed and power and money, and we can frack in your backyard, depending on where you live. We can start that like next week. And yet they're not even allowed to talk about Antarctica, even though supposedly it's made out of money. A mountain range made out of coal and uranium and minerals and oil. Not even allowed to talk about it. It was just fascinating. That was my tipping point. Most people's tipping point is long distance photography, which we'll get into. But for me, it was the Antarctic Treaty.
Right, and so and we do have. I'm gonna try to bring up a picture here of where you're sort of talking about the edge, and I was trying to find a good picture that actually has the like the ice wall around it. I think this is a
well, you can just type in. I mean, have any of your listeners just type in Antarctic coastline and click on images. That'll show you what we're talking about here. And by that, I don't mean, it's a common misconception that the coastline of Antarctica isn't the edge of the world. And by the way, let me dispel the other stuff. We're not talking about a flat asteroid that's flying in space. That's one of the most common images that's put out there. We're saying that it's just some snow globe that could be sitting on somebody's desk. The movie Thor did us no favors whatsoever because, the cosmic waterfall, it's like, why is all the water, why doesn't all the water fall off? And it's like, well, why doesn't water fall off in a lake? You're in a building with a saltwater lake inside it. There's no difference. But the Antarctic coastline, for example, is the beginning of the edge of the world. I mean, you would have to, our best guys. So we started looking for this back in 1928, the United States Navy, with a guy named Admiral Richard Byrd. And he basically spent, the youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, he basically spent the remainder of his career from 1928 till his death in 1957 just flying around Antarctica. That's all, with the exception of World War II. And during that time, nothing happened. They just kept looking and looking and looking. And then during Operation Deep Freeze, again, not classified information, from 55 to 56, that's when, in my opinion, he found it. He found the outer border. So when you get to the Antarctic coastline, fascinating continent, by the way. So yeah, you have to go, you know, it's an ice wall for most of it, but there's some peninsulas that are beaches, rocky beaches. But then when you get up on top of it, it ramps up to about 14,000 feet. Most of the continent, even by mainstream standards, is a 14,000 foot plateau. There's no indigenous animal life, no plant life, no ancient civilizations as far as we know, and it continues for thousands of miles. So the outer edge, the outer marker, would be thousands of miles in from the beach.
And I think in watching an interview with you with somebody else last night,
Yeah.
they were sort of saying like, well, why hasn't anyone figured this out? Not just maybe the people that you're saying are like in on the conspiracy of this, right?
Right.
But for other folks out there, and I think there's examples. I think there was a fellow, I think a couple of years ago, that was trying to build a rocket, right? So that because he wanted to go up himself and actually take pictures and show that there was no curvature.
Mad Mike Hughes, I know this one I know this intimately. Mad Mike Hughes approached us, and again, sorry if you didn't catch the news. He died earlier this year.
Oh no, I didn't realize.
That's all right. That's all right. It's not a big deal. He was a daredevil first before he was a flat earther. I mean, he was a stunt man that jumped limos. I mean, that's what daredevils do. That's the reason why people go to see him. It's like, oh, he could die, which is why he was supposed to be in the documentary Behind the Curve. But then the producers said, what happens if he crashes?
Right.
Can we use that footage? And they decided they couldn't. And so then he finally got a deal with the Science Channel, of all things, a program called Homemade Astronauts. And the short version is he came to us back in 2017 and said, hey, can you donate to my cause and help me finish my rocket? And, we said, fine, how much is it going to take? And he said, $8,000. We gave him $8,000. And we said, you got to put a flat earth sticker on the side of it, which is why the media just went crazy with it. And he launched a couple times and it was fine. It was never intended. Come on, he was only going up a couple thousand feet. He was never intended to prove anything. It was just there for awareness. Mike's priorities are in this order. In fact, you can mix the top three: fame, money, girls, stuntman work, and then maybe flat earth. He had to learn flat earth on the fly. When he came to us initially, didn't know anything about flat earth. He just thought it's like, oh, okay, maybe we could help promote each other. He had no idea it was going to do as well as it did. So anyway, he was just shooting just recently, before the whole virus thing happened, an episode for Homemade Astronauts for the Science Channel, and his parachute it deployed early. It fell off. The parachute system fell off the rocket as it was going up. It was like, okay, well, that's the end of that. And he was part of our group, but not really part of our group. He was there for more awareness. Other people have done it. And it's like, yeah, he was more of a fringe member than anything else.
So, Mark, interestingly, and I'm not sure, the fellow who introduced us, which I'm, old friends with, he knows my background. So one thing that I had done years ago, working for a consulting company, was to work on the Red Bull Stratos project.
Oh, that thing. Yeah.
And so my role in it, and just to sort of be like very transparent, is I did the engineering, or sort of like I did the planning and the implementation of doing the metadata insertion within the live video stream. And what that means is the biometric and environmental data that was being collected both on Felix's suit and on the shuttle itself for both his, stuff like his heart rate and blood pressure, but also wind speed, air pressure, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
That was being measured on him in real time, that we wanted to insert it to be frame accurate into the video stream. So this way, if you or anyone else were watching live when it was happening and you scrubbed back, the interface back then had all of that biometric and environmental data. And what we didn't want was for there to be not the right sync. And then all of a sudden people would be like, haha, look, I just scrubbed back and it says that, his heart rate is this, but it was actually, much lower. He's in the middle of falling, and look, now you're saying his heart rate is high.
Right.
No, please go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say that we had no problem with any of that. In fact, the Red Bull jump, the only thing because the Red Bull jump is brought up to me a lot, was the outer visual with that massive fisheye lens, to where even Neil deGrasse Tyson, which I loved, Neil finally helped us in this case, where Neil did a presentation shortly after the jump, and he was saying that visually it was somewhat scientifically dishonest, because the lens showed a curvature on the Earth which was so exaggerated for 130,000 feet. Again, not knocking the Red Bull thing and your part in it or anything. He's like, hey, great, no small feat to get up somebody to 130,000 feet to jump out of a balloon. Great. But they push, like anything, it's hyped. And it's like, oh yeah, this is the edge of space. And Neil went on and said, no, that is not the edge of space. And he went as far as to say, he goes, no one would ever be able to see any curvature from 130,000 feet, which is I use that anytime anyone says, oh yeah, I saw the curvature from an airplane, I throw them Neil deGrasse Tyson's clip. I say, okay, fine. That's the most popular scientist in the world currently. You want to say you differ from him? Go ahead. He's on your team.
Well, and so just, because there's folks that we're still getting a lot of very interesting comments out there.
So are all the other planets flat too, include not just the Earth?
No. They might very well could be spherical, but you can't land on them. They're just lights in the sky. And it's a good question. I mean,
so planets are what, lights? You saying?
Well, they're just lights. No different than the moon. Like for example, if you go into a planetarium, and I know this dates me because nobody goes to planetariums anymore. But if you went to a planetarium, you could see the moon on the ceiling. It's perfect. It's like, wow, there's the moon on the ceiling. Yeah. Can you land on it? No. Why not? Well, it's just a light in the sky. Light on the ceiling.
They say the moon affects water, affects like
they say a lot of things.
The moon, so it doesn't affect high and low tide. The moon?
No, it's just there. I mean, it's not coincidental. It's just the moon and the sun and the stars and the planets are just basically an elaborate.
So then, what is an eclipse?
The what?
What does the eclipse do to the moon then?
The eclipse is just the moon self-dimming.
Sorry, we can do.
No, it's right. We can do all this stuff in a planetarium, all of it. And so again, when you walk out of a planetarium building, who's to say you're not just in a much bigger building?
Who's have you ever seen the Truman Show, Eric?
So the sun isn't flat? The sun is flat?
The what?
The sun is just a big light, is what you're saying?
Yeah, sun's just a big incandescent light bulb, and the moon is just an LED night light, for lack of a better term, and it's self-illuminated on top of it, meaning it's not reflecting the sun's rays at all.
Nice. So then when the moon becomes like a half moon, you saying like half the moonlight shut off?
Yeah.
Got you.
That's all I'm saying. I mean, it is no different. We have the tech. Well, hell, we've had the technology to do most of this since the 70s. The only thing we couldn't do was the sun because it was too bright. We didn't have the capacity to generate that sort of lumens. Couldn't generate that sort of brightness, but we can now. In fact, there was a company called.
So the sun wasn't that bright, is what you're saying back in the day?
No. We didn't have the ability to generate that bright. No. Sorry. I forgot. What I'm saying here is, by the way, that we had nothing to do with the building of this place. Whatever's happening up there, the stars and the sun and the moon and all that stuff has nothing to do with our civilization at all. It predates us. It was built by someone that was way older and way more powerful than us. Well, I know you could either go an advanced civilization, some sort of ancient aliens thing, or God. I tend to lean towards the God side, the divine side. But yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So planets are lights. Then why do we give them a name and stuff? Why? Like,
Well, yes, I
Why
guess.
not?
Yeah, I
Why
guess
not?
Eric wants to know why, like, sort of what, like, why did this come about? Like, what if at some point scientists discovered that the Earth was flat?
Right.
Why the big ruse? Why?
Why keep it going?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't know if that was his question, but I'll go down that part first, which is okay. Why lie? Because we didn't even figure it out for sure. We didn't know for sure. Because remember, our tech is not that old. Remember, we haven't had what HD televisions for 20 years, not even 20 years. So if you found out, I'll ask you as a journalist, if you found out in 1960, all of a sudden your scientists figured this out in 1960, would you tell the public? If you didn't know for sure, and to remember, because we didn't even really have pressurized planes until later. By the time you got to Antarctica, it's like, oh crap, the world is a building. We are in some sort of Truman Show. Would you tell the general public? It seems like an easy answer. It's like, yeah, the people have a right to know. Like, yeah, but you realize your civilization has already been established, very much established, and there could be some shock waves.
so how do
out
you
of it.
explain
Well,
the what is it called? Coriolis effect in the planes when they fly
Coriolis
and they,
effect.
yeah, there you go. How you explain that then?
The Coriolis effect?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, for folks at home, I
Wait a minute.
believe that's when you go up high. The idea is
That's
that you're
when
going
the
up high
plane-
enough, and
when a
everyone
plane is
floats in
trying-
the plane, right?
No, it's when the plane is
Hang on.
so they change the direction based on the rotation of the Earth. So like if you're flying from New York to Hawaii, there's a certain direction you got to go because of the way.
Oh
the Earth is
yeah. I'm
spinning.
sorry. The spinning. So the Coriolis effect. Okay. The Coriolis effect, I don't usually get that question because normally it has to do with artillery, but the Coriolis effect will affect planes
Yeah.
as well. So the Coriolis effect, does the Earth spin at 1,000? If you believe in the globe, then the globe spins at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, but it spins at 0 at the North Pole and the South Pole. That's actually a great question for us because most snipers, in fact, every military guy I've talked to, forget about planes for a second. Think about everything we shoot: bullets, missiles, tanks, howitzers, all that stuff. Nobody ever builds Coriolis. Short version for anyone listening is the Coriolis effect is just the spin of the Earth. Do we build in the spin of the Earth into any of our firing solutions? No. There isn't a military guy out there that will tell you that. And the reason why we know this is because the Coriolis effect depends on your region. So if it spins at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator and 0 miles an hour at the North or South Pole, then somewhere in America would be 700 miles an hour, maybe 800, depending on where you are. Well, if you're shooting a cannon 30 miles, 40 miles, or whatever it is, you have to not only at that point know windage and elevation, but you have to know where you are geographically, and you have to build in a whole nother chart. Every military guy, every single one has told me the same thing, which is we don't account for it. Now with planes, it's a little easier, which is, remember, a plane is just a slow bullet. It flies at 600 miles an hour, give or take, but it flies much, much longer distances. And for us, when it comes to planes, usually we deal with the curvature of the Earth issue, which is why doesn't it nose down or nose up as it's flying? Because remember, if it's flying over a curvature of the Earth, eventually, and some people say, well, no, gravity's keeping it perfectly locked in. It's like, nah, that's not how it works. Either it's going to have to nose down or nose up. And you're right. When it comes to the Coriolis effect, if it's landing on a runway and that runway is supposedly moving at hundreds of miles an hour in a given direction, why doesn't it account for that? It doesn't. It's a good question, though.
So explain the center of the Earth now. Explain
The center of the Earth?
core. Explain.
I just watched, by the way, no, it's good. I just rewatched The Core, the movie from
exactly
15 years ago. Just rewatched that, which is, I don't laugh when I watch it. I mean, it's a good speculation movie because people will say, how deep is the flat Earth? How deep, how thick is it? It's like, I don't know. How thick is it in the globe? And they say, well, it's 4,000 miles to the center of the Earth. I go, really? I go, what's the deepest hole ever drilled? 2,000? 1,000? 100? 10? It's 8 miles. Deepest hole ever drilled. Russians and the Germans tried for years. Once they got down to that 8-mile marker, they just kept trying and trying, and they just kept melting things off. They said, nope, can't go any deeper than 8 miles. and yet the cross section of the Earth, we all seen it, red and orange and yellow and white. These bands, how do you know that? You don't. As a fact, if you look in the small print or look on Wiki, it'll say it's like we have no idea what's down there. We're just basing it off of what comes up.
So what about the bottom of the ocean, the Mariana Trench, then?
That's only 30-something thousand feet down. That's nothing. I mean, it's just a few miles. Even now, if they were smart, yes, you're absolutely right. They should try to get. They'll never be able to do it because we just don't have the tech to do it. But try to get a drill into the Marianas Trench. Maybe you might be able to go further. And I've taken it a step further. I don't really tell a lot of people this. If you really wanted to drill really, really deep and see go past 8 miles, you just use nukes. You just like nuke in big chunks, just and try to work your way down. So, maybe the military.
So then, what exactly is at the center of the Earth? Then what is keeping the Earth alive?
There is no center. There is no center of the Earth because there is no globe. There's if people, again, I challenge any scientist, like, tell me what the center of the Earth is, and they'll say, oh, we use seismic radar or all this other stuff. Because really, because you've had these cross sections of the Earth for a long time, way before you had seismic radar. And I've never seen a seismic radar chart showing exactly what it should look like. And I'll throw one more thing out there, Andrew. Even if you could convince me that you know what the core of the Earth looks like, which you can't, how in the hell are you telling me what the core of Mars and Jupiter and Saturn? There's cross sections of every planet in our galaxy. It's like, how do you? It's just absolute guesswork. Science is just guessing, and they don't like saying that. It's like science loves saying, this is what it is, until it isn't, and then they revise it.
Do you believe in aliens?
Now what it is. What?
Do you believe in aliens?
I used to, but not in the way. In fact, I still believe in other civilizations, but not. So, do I believe there are things flying in the sky? Yeah, you can take night vision binoculars. I own several pair, and it's fascinating. You can watch with night vision binoculars. The sky is just crawling with things. Do I think they are from Jupiter and Mars and Venus? No, I do not. Do I think they're probably just older versions of us? Yeah, I do. The most famous alien encounter was not Roswell. It was not 1899 Aurora, Texas. Look it up. It's not even secret. It's 1561 Nuremberg, Germany. There's a wiki entry on it. It's fascinating. Where two huge fleets of ships just went over the city and just beat the hell out of each other. And then then the cops showed up. Apparently, I call them the cops. And then everyone left. And they were there for a full hour. A beautiful spring day, not a cloud in the sky.
And so, Mark, I know, even just with the title "Flat Earth Recruiter," you don't mind a healthy dose of skepticism from us. Because
no. If you don't make fun of flat Earth in the first 10 minutes you look at, there's probably something wrong with you. Because I did. I hammered on this thing for 9 months.
So, what do you think a black hole is?
For me, everything that's in space, and again, I don't want to come down on the astrophysicists and the astronomers too hard, but they're trying to describe things in the sky which they don't know. So, hell, I'll see your black hole and raise it dark matter.
Do you remember back when the neutron star exploded? One of the neutron stars exploded that was kind of far away, and it affected a lot of electromagnetic stuff here back in like 2006. Sure.
Look, I mean, you're looking though. Don't forget that what you're looking at is basically just a large projection screen, and it was whoever built it with the intent, or like the Truman Show, to make us believe we're in a solar system. That was the ultimate goal, because you have to get rid of the fence. Human beings hate confinement, hate it. So to create a universe where seems like it's unlimited, that's what you'd want to do. So everything you see in the sky, again, black holes, neutron stars, quasars, whatever galaxy, whatever nebula, just goes on and on and on. Those space stories are there for one reason and one reason only. In fact, even the conspiracy stories, the spot on Jupiter changed, there's a face on Mars, some weird thing on the top of Saturn, oh, we're reclassifying Pluto, and on and on. They're there for one reason and one reason only. That is to reinforce that you are on a globe. Saturn, globe, everything globe. Because as long as you think you're on a globe, you're never going to look for the edge.
So, Mark, I know that NASA has been an organization that flat earthers believe is sort of at the center of the idea of like that we've all been fed a false story, a false narrative, right?
Sure. Yeah.
What about companies like Tesla? And I'm sorry, I know it's not Tesla, but SpaceX.
SpaceX,
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what about like SpaceX and private, organizations that are going up, and then also what about other countries? And one thing I'll say that just sort of reminds me of this is that for decades everyone was like, aliens aren't real, right? Like that they're fake, and it's because in the U.S. at least here in the U.S., like it was always just a fantastic tale. Now we have like not only folks saying, from the military and our U.S. government, like semi sort of admitting that there's stuff out there, but we have other countries that are sort of like, yes, there's definitely aliens out there, right?
Sure.
So and again, for a lot of us, like we haven't necessarily seen the proof, and it's almost like what you're saying, like we see an Air Force jet, monitor that's showing a weird light that seems to be acting strange, and none of us actually understand the context around that. And somebody could be like, yes, you're watching a screen with an alien chip on it, and we kind of have to either believe them or not believe it.
Okay, let me get the first one out of the way. The private space programs, that would be SpaceX, Blue Horizon by I think it was Google or Amazon, and I think it's Google, and Virgin Galactic. We'll go do the high profile one first. For the longest time, by the way, we had no private space programs. Eventually that was going to happen as billionaires became created, as our technology and our population, we were going to get more billionaires. But SpaceX is probably the most blatant, because he gets away. I don't know how he does it, and I wrote about it in the book. I actually spent, I think, like 3 pages against Elon Musk, because the man never delivers on anything he ever promises, ever. In fact, the New York Post, I was so happy when they ran their headline that said Elon Musk is a total fraud, because he's just, I mean, yes, fine. In fact, he didn't even, if you ask the average person on the street, for example, who created Tesla Motors, they say, oh, Elon Musk. Like, no, he bought him. He bought it. Like Ray Kroc bought McDonald's and Mark Cuban bought the Dallas Mavericks. He bought Tesla Motors. Elon Musk was a software engineer. That's all he did. He helped build PayPal. Mm-hmm. That's it. And then he got in on the IPO and was a billionaire overnight. But so when somebody I'll give you a quick one. When somebody sent me that the link to the Tesla in space, I initially thought I was one of our guys that had photoshopped the image, and I go, oh, who made that? Was that Jaron? Was that who Bob? Who made that? And he goes, no, man, that's a live link. I'm going, live link? What are you talking about, live link? I click on this thing, and it was the Impossible car. Basically, the car, if you took the average car and you put it into space, some sort of horrible high temperature, low temperature vacuum, that car would have self-destructed. Everything would have melted. The tires would have detonated. Every pressurized system would have detonated. The windshields would have spider-webbed. But the part that got me more than anything, and again, it was perfectly high-res image until they turned it off, even though it was supposedly going to Mars. And it's like, oh no, the battery's going out. It's like, what? What are you talking about? I'm not even seeing distortion. It was a perfect image. No, what got me was there were no logos anywhere. You talk about a private company and a public company, right? Very high profile companies, by the way. And there isn't a single logo anywhere to be found. That thing should have looked like NASCAR. It should have been wall to wall stickers. And not only that, why'd you use the Roadster? Why didn't you use your flagship, the Model S, a 4-door? You could have sold seats and that thing would have paid for itself. Instead of that generic dummy, that mannequin that was sitting there in the driver's seat, you could have sold all 4 to Disney. You could have had Iron Man, a Stormtrooper, Groot, and Boba Fett. The thing would have paid for itself. And you didn't see any of that. I'm sorry. Tesla Motors. Now, is he in on it? Yeah, probably, but not at the highest level. I mean, for example, by the way, why does Tesla get to, I'm sorry, not Tesla, SpaceX. You got me going now. Why did SpaceX get to launch from Florida? Why did they get to launch from Cape Canaveral? It's like they are literally direct competition to NASA. Why would NASA be helping them in any way, shape, or form? No, private space, and by the way, even if they're not in on it, like let's say you were part of Blue Horizon. Let's say you founded Blue Horizon. Where are you going to get your engineers from? So you're drafting that pool straight out of NASA. The ex-NASA engineers. That's where you're getting people, is so you could infiltrate any one of those groups if you wanted to.
Can you explain the time zones and sunsets and how, like, if I FaceTime somebody if I'm in New York and I FaceTime somebody in Cali,
yes,
it's bright outside.
No, that's a wonderful question, and we get that. I've gotten that forever. Which is okay. Why are there time zones at all? That's the big question. It's like, well, if it's flat, then wherever the sun is should be lighting up everything constantly. So it should never be nighttime. It should always be just daytime at all points. And it's like, well, yeah, and that's part of it's our fault because it's the way we draw the way we draw it. when you look at any diagram of the flat Earth, you see the sun and the moon. But the sun and the moon in our models are actually really, 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 really small, less than 50 miles wide. But we can't draw them 50 miles wide on the map because you wouldn't be able to see them. They'd be smaller in a pixel. So we have to draw them like 1,000 miles wide. And that screws up the whole thing. And so to your point, if it is 50 miles wide and we've got physical and computer models to show you, it's beautiful. It's basically just a directional light source. And so if the sun is really, really small and really, really close, like less than 3,000 miles up, it just goes off into the distance. That's all it is. Combine that with the thickness of the atmosphere, it works really, really well. So the sun, short version, sun is really small. And if you have an object that's really small, it can only light up a very, very small area. And then you just have it going overhead like a mobile above a child's crib, going around in a circle.
Is the Earth affected by the sun's gravity?
No, nothing's affected. The
gravitation. We don't go into rotation around the sun 365 days.
No. I mean, we're talking about a literal building. So our whole world, our whole universe is basically a building, which is, again, walls, floor, ceiling. And in the middle of that building is a saltwater lake, which is our oceans. In the middle of that are some continents, which might as well be islands. And then above us, tiny little sun and the moon just going around the top of us. The moon doesn't affect anything. The sun doesn't. I mean, yeah, the sun generates some heat, but we actually can create more energy with the underwater conveyor system or the jet stream.
So you saying we get most of our heat from underwater?
A lot of the heat energy does get transferred through underwater. Look up the underwater conveyor system. Huge amounts of energy gets transferred. Remember, most of the world is water.
Yeah.
But the sun does help. The sun does help, but it's not all of it. Not even close.
Mark, we've had, and we can sort of see the chats going on across all the different places this goes at, and we've been watching the chat with some great interest out there. You have some supporters out there. You have a lot of people asking interesting questions, and I think for the most part, most people are being respectful. But it's
okay. You gotta understand. I'm pretty thick-skinned when it comes to this. I've been doing this for 5 years now. And I've gotten hit with just about everything you can think of. And look, and when people, just so you know, I can't really get mad. I mean, if you want to turn it personal, that's one thing. But I can't get mad because I was on the other side of the fence. You know, people say, well, why don't you yell at certain people? It's like, I can't. I used to be them. I was there. I literally was banging my head on the keyboard 5 years ago going, there's no way, there's no way, there's no way. Which is why, I'm not here to convince or persuade.
So what is gravity to you then? What is gravity?
Dun, dun, dun. That's love that question. Okay. What is gravity? And Neil deGrasse Tyson will back me up on this. Even mainstream science can't tell you what gravity is. Neil Tyson, many interviews, and every physicist will say this. He's like, we can't tell you what gravity is. We can only tell you what it does. We can only tell you the symptoms of it. You drop something, it falls, right? It's a magical molecular force that pulls things to the center of the earth, if you're mainstream science. For us, it's a magical molecular force that just pulls things straight down. The only difference is that we also key in something like density, which is if you are living in a building, then it's a pressurized system, kind of like water. When you take a volleyball or a beach ball, you put it underwater. Why does it pop back up? Because of density. It's less dense and it pops back up. Or when you take a helium balloon, and you let go, what happens? It goes up as far as it can. Why? Because the helium is less dense, and so on and so on. So no, gravity, I believe in gravity. I have no problem with gravity. Gravity for me is almost identical to what gravity is in mainstream science.
You have another question? I thought you.
Where are you getting these questions from? Are you getting them from chat?
No, I'm just thinking about them.
Yeah, some of them were from chat, but a lot of Eric's it's just him sort of thinking right now as we're going through, and
No, it's good. Everybody does the same thing. That when you get hit with flat Earth, when somebody hits you with this, it's like even if you start thinking about it for a minute, it's like, okay, what about this, and how does this work? I mean, that's literally what I do every day. Like,
so how do we prove that the Earth is flat?
Okay, how would you prove it? I can give you five 5 things to think about. That's the first one would be long distance photography, far and away the most common one used. I didn't even come up with it. I did not use it in Flat Earth Clues. It wasn't even used in the documentary. I wish it was, but that's fine. The producers hated us, and I get it. And they still won't talk to us anymore afterwards. Long distance photography. So if you look off into the distance, forget about side to side. Forget about that. If you look off into the distance, how do you know, without using the space program, how do you know the world is a globe? Well, because ships go off into the horizon. And they go off, and finally they're disappeared. And you say, well, they've obviously gone over the horizon. They've gone behind the curve. And the curve is measurable, you know, for less than 500 miles. Mainstream says it's 8 inches per mile squared, or 8 inches per mile per mile. It's an easy way to figure it out would be 10 miles is 10 times 10, which is 100, times 8 inches is 800 inches. And it goes steeper and steeper as you go along. So 50 miles is almost 1,700 feet, give or take. Well, there's a problem there, and that is 10 years ago, if a boat went over the horizon, went off in distance, it was gone forever because your cameras weren't good enough. Now, however, with HD really changed everything. Now you can take a P1000 or a P900 and just crank up the zoom. That boat's back. And then you can let it go off again, crank up the zoom even further. Well, that's the problem, because eventually that boat's got to be on the other side of the hill, to where the only limit we have now, we can see objects and landscapes of over 100 miles. Find me an object, a lighthouse, a boat, or whatever, an oil rig. Oil rigs are my favorite right now, that we can't see. In fact, the only reason why we can't see, people say, well, why can't you see Japan from California? Why can't you see Europe or why can't you see Mount Everest from everywhere? I get that at least 1 out of every 10 questions. Why can't you see this from this? And that's because you got to remember what we're breathing in, what you guys are talking through, and all this is only mostly transparent. You're not breathing in nothing. It looks transparent, but it's mostly nitrogen, a little bit of oxygen, and some trace gases. And that gets thicker over time. You're basically breathing in a thin version of water. That's the first one. Long distance photography, far and away. Second one would be gravity versus the vacuum of space, which I love so much. Gravity, gravity, right? Who wins, gravity or vacuum? Vacuum will always win. If you suck a soda out of a glass, you're using vacuum force. Why doesn't gravity keep that soda in the glass? Well, because the vacuum you created beat it all day long. If there's a second floor in your building and you turn the second floor into a vacuum chamber and you had a valve up above and you popped it, what would happen? You know full well what would happen. The air would rush up instantly, violently. It would equalize. You'd probably black out, maybe even die. So the question is, why didn't gravity keep the air in your room instead of going upstairs? Because vacuum always wins. Well, that's an issue, because if you go outside, why is our atmosphere still here? Your initial response, your knee-jerk response is to say, well, gravity. Gravity is really the same gravity that couldn't even keep the air in your room from going upstairs, that gravity. I actually had a guy come back and say, well, there's so much more gravity outside. It's like, no, it's the exact same gravity. So, and I asked science. Science will not be able to tell you, where does our atmosphere end and space begin? Because space supposedly is this pure vacuum with this massive negative Tor reading. It's a pure vacuum.
Can you explain orbit?
Orbit?
Yeah, like a satellite orbiting. What is it? It orbits around the Earth.
Okay, I'll get to it. Hang on. So 3 more quick things. And I'll rattle them off real fast so I can get to a satellite question. Third one would be the eclipse shadow is too small. So if the moon is 2,000 miles wide, why is the eclipse shadow only 70 miles wide? Shadows can't get smaller. Ever. We can't do it here. Why? How are we going to make shadows smaller? In fact, it doesn't make more sense because our model, the moon is only 50 miles wide. So the blackout zone fits. 2,000 miles wide doesn't fit. And you say, well, that's because it's condensing. It's a lens effect. It's like, really? So the same thing should happen. If the Earth is in front of the sun, we should see this 250-mile wide blackout zone on the moon. We never, ever see it. We always see a blood moon. It doesn't make any sense. Fourth one is the moon temperature, which I didn't even believe in this for a year, which was the moon is generating a cold light. Not only is it self-illuminated, but it's generating a cold light. So if it's 90 degrees in the sun, it's 80 degrees in the shade. We all know that. But if it's at 50 degrees in the moonlight, it's warmer in the moon shade, up to 13 degrees warmer, as a matter of fact. And that doesn't make any damn sense, because remember, if the moon is reflecting the sun's radiation, it should never go negative. The moon is generating a cold laser light. We can do this in universities. Doesn't make any sense. You can check this with a point-and-click $20 thermometer from a hardware store. In fact, I was the first one to suggest, like, what happens if you take a magnifying glass to moonlight? It even gets colder. Now, does that prove a flat Earth? No, it does not, but it absolutely destroys the relationship between the sun and the moon. Last one, and I swear I'll get you a satellite one, which is the last one was the Van Allen radiation belt trap question, which is Van Allen radiation belts announced by NASA in 1958, right? Super deadly bands of radiation, you can't get through them. That's what he said anyway back in 58. So are they deadly? Yes or no? If you say yes, then how the Americans do round trips through them for the entire space program. Round trips with no shielding. Remember, the only things that stop radiation are lead, gold, and a whole bunch of water. Everyone went through with plastic and aluminum, and nobody got radiation poisoning. Nobody died. Nobody even got cancer. There's still 5 of these guys walking around today. And if you say, oh, well, it's not deadly, then you can go to nasa.gov, and there's a wonderful video there called Orion Trial by Fire, which says we can't test capsules because we haven't solved the radiation problem. You solved it perfectly. What are you talking about? It's a complete contradiction. So your satellites, do I think, no, the better question for you is, do I think satellites exist? Yes, I do. Do I think they were put up there by rockets? No. No, not at all. Because in fact, again, this is not classified material. You can look up the high altitude balloon programs from NASA. NASA launches hundreds of balloons every day. They are the world's leading consumer of helium and probably hydrogen for that matter. They can do payloads now with weather balloons. I've seen them launch satellites. In fact, not a secret. Payloads upwards of 4 tons. That's 8,000 pounds. If you can launch an 8,000 pound balloon satellite via balloon, why the hell would you launch anything by a rocket? I mean, that's pennies on the dollar. So do I think there's rockets made? Yes. Do I think that most people know anything about it? No. I think the rockets just go off into the distance and splash down somewhere in the ocean.
Wait, hold on.
Are there satellites? Sure, but the
rockets is they put them in rockets so they can give them the speed to go around in orbit. They travel at like.
Or you could use. Remember, if it's a flat model, you can just use the jet stream. If you take the
balloons
flat
don't
model,
orbit. They go up there. Weather balloons go up there to check the weather. It's not a rocket. A rocket goes up there to a satellite is in orbit to give us signals from space to the Earth. In
some cases, yes, but even your best telecommunications guy will admit that's 95% of our bandwidth is still underwater fiber optics. We have a massive underwater fiber optic network out there that handles most of the load. Sure, we have we have satellites tethered to balloons that get to do a few things. Sure. But as far as putting up in rockets, nah, don't have to. Why would you?
So how do we get GPS then? I don't understand. If we had GPS, how do we
love it? No, these are good. These are fantastic questions, and these questions make sense because you're connecting the dots. GPS system is not what you think it is, and I did a clue on this, which was the GPS system is just, remember, GPS stands for Global Positioning System, supposedly 32 blanket coverage overlapping satellites that surround the entire world. No, it's not that at all. In fact, every pilot I've talked to, everybody that deals with the GPS system says there's huge gaps, massive gaps. In fact, it appears to be just the old Loran system, which is ground-based radar. That's it. When you go, in fact, the easy way to test this, which is why I did a clue.
What about Google Earth then? How can you travel
Google
around?
Google Earth is just a wonderful software program that's overlaying the maps onto, and it bends them around the sphere. That's all it does.
Interesting.
Google Earth is nothing. By the way, it's not a photograph. Google Earth is literally just a composite of a whole bunch of images that are stitched around a sphere. Seriously, look up if you get a chance. It's not. Again, this is not classified information. The first picture that was ever taken of the Earth from space, supposedly, first one was Apollo 17, otherwise known as the Blue Marble, which was done in 1972. Do you know how many years it was before they took another full disc shot of the Earth from space? 2015, 43 years. 43 years, no one took a photo of the Earth. In fact, and this is not speculation. Obama even went on television and talked about it. It's like, oh, second blue marble from space. Really wonderful. It's like, really? 43 years? No one questioned it? It's all composites. And when Photoshop came out, then all bets were off because now you can Photoshop pretty much anything. What didn't I answer? You had an alien. What you had a second part to your question. I can't remember what it was.
Who, mine?
Now.
Oh no, I think he was. I think he
yours.
Was, yeah. So well, it's to me, it's an interesting thing because the idea of to me, and hopefully I don't get anyone angry with this, but to me, adopting belief around flat Earth to me is as easy as somebody who adopts belief around religion, even because really, and that's why I was. And by the way, I'm not trying to. I hope that's not being too disrespectful. But
no, you're fine.
It's more that like when people are explaining stuff to us that we can't believe, and by the way, I know what your point will be, but when people are explaining stuff to us that we can't believe, we have to suspend that disbelief so that we can like grab onto that concept and start to believe that it's true, right?
Right.
And so but the thing is that there's most of the world around us. We have to sort of suspend some level of disbelief because even traditional science, the fact that somebody's telling me that water is made up of, hydrogen and oxygen, right? Like I have to believe that because I may not be able to prove that myself. And so I think the one thing for a lot of folks out there is that it's the whole correlation and causation thing, right? And so we can come up with things that make a lot of sense, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that it's true. And so, by the way, I don't necessarily, I personally, I find this intently interesting. I don't necessarily subscribe to it, but I enjoy talking about it. I think it's fun to talk about. Sure. I will tell you that there's definitely people out there who you've definitely enticed, and I mean it makes a lot of sense. That's what you do. And I'm sure you'll have some folks following up with you. But I guess my thing is that it strikes me that it would be easier to prove that the Earth is, and I understand you gave your 5 points, but it would be easier to to come up with like concrete, hard proof to folks that the world is flat. It might actually be easier to prove that than it would be to prove that it's a globe.
All right, I'll use the court case real fast, which is, can I prove to you right now that the Earth is flat? No. Couldn't prove it, because if I could, I'd be on the cover of every magazine out there.
You wouldn't be talking with us. You'd be talking with
CNN. I'd be talking with everybody. I do junior high schools now.
So what is a volcano to you then? Where does a volcano lead to? Where does it come from? Is it just
volcano? And this part usually ticks people off because from an engineering standpoint, it's very, very big. Which is volcanoes. Remember, everything about this is artificial, including volcanoes. So if there is a magma system, you wouldn't leave that to chance. People say, "Well, we don't have no."
So you don't believe there's a super volcano under?
Yeah. No, I do. I do think there's a super volcano. Yeah, I think there's a complete magma system underneath us, but I think it's absolutely controlled. I think it's monitored by us. I think if you were going to build a little terrarium for your tarantula, right? And you put a light and a little thing of water and some rocks and stuff, would you leave anything to the natural processes of that? No, you're going to make sure everything is monitored. Now, a magma system is very intriguing, and having a super volcano in Yosemite is a scary threat. And you can also put evidence of other volcanoes that have done horrible things, but it would still be artificial. Sorry,
so the meteor that hit and knocked the dinosaurs out, that's artificial?
Dinosaurs are artificial. Now you're getting into some fun stuff. Because for me, you got to remember our unbroken civilization our history only goes back 5,000 years, give or take, before all of a sudden then there's these big gaps. Do I think we're the first people to rent this apartment? No, not a chance. I mean, look at the sunken cities off of Japan, sunken cities off of India, Puma Punku, the real pyramids, the Bosnian pyramids, Bimini Road, goes on and on. So between civilizations, I think there is terraforming. Now, do I think that some of the early parts of this world, back when the continents were all one big Pangea, do I think there were giant dinosaurs, giant to us, but little lizards to whoever built this place? Do I think they were running around? Sure. Yeah, I do. Do I think they were wiped out by something catastrophic? Sure. I think every civilization has their time here. And after that time is up, we have to leave. We graduate. We go. You don't have to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. type of thing, like the senior class. Senior class can't stick around forever. And so, yeah, do I think there's evidence of that? Sure. Craters here, that wonderful crater in Arizona, or the Gulf of Mexico, or any of the other.
So do you believe in global warming?
It's so interesting that I have gotten so many of those questions over the last year. Yeah, I do. I do believe in global warming.
So you believe that the Earth? So you believe that the globe is?
Well, I don't call it global warming. Yeah, gotta remember, even media doesn't call it global warming anymore. They call it climate change. But I'll go with the global warming thing. Doesn't it make more sense that if you have greenhouse gases, if it's an actual greenhouse? Remember, the old global warming climate change thing didn't make much sense to me if it was a globe, because those hot gases have to get up to a certain point and then they just stay there.
And that's so that's what you're saying, like the water heats up, that the water is creating heat. That's because the ocean sucks in all the carbon dioxide.
But he's also saying that because it's like a snow globe, there's the covering.
Think of it this way: if you bring a propane, remember, if it's a pressurized system, if it's an enclosed system, you bring a propane lantern into a car that's got its air conditioning running. That air conditioning is going to have to compensate for that propane lantern. It's going to create some hot and cold spots where they shouldn't be, some weird weather. You put another lantern in, it's going to get weirder and weirder until it's just chaos in there. Do I think human beings have an effect on this world? Yes, even though it's an automated system, and I think there's automated ways of controlling stuff through the jet stream or the underwater conveyor. Do I think that humans have an effect? Yeah, I do. I mean, come on. The cars you run, unless you're running a battery-powered car, is just a furnace. That's all it is. I mean, you're burning, it's a little furnace that could easily heat your house. And we have billions of these things running at all times in different parts of the world. So yeah, do I think that climate change is real? Yeah. Do I think the ice caps will necessarily melt and will drown? No, we haven't really seen. We've seen a few islands here and there, but I think the system is trying to compensate. I think something else is coming down the pipe. I think eventually the system will have to compensate for us, but I don't think it's going to do it with water.
So for Mark, I got to say, having come from the media, and fake news is like a big thing these days. Everyone sort of loves to use that term. I personally find it people don't realize they're using it as an excuse to not be media literate, right? It's their excuse to sort of say, like, I don't have time to fact check, or I don't have time to figure out if this makes sense. I just have an emotional feeling about it, and so I'm gonna run with it. And then when they find out that it's not real, then they call it fake news because they believe that media has the responsibility to tell the truth, but it's called the free press because they're supposed to be able to do what they want, and we're supposed to be smart enough to know the difference between truth and lies and opinion and fact and fiction, right? And the fact and fiction part is tough because we rely on other people to teach us about science, right, and stuff like that.
And you also rely on corporations, rely on parent corporations. Anyone that brings up fake news, I kind of tongue-in-cheek throw this at them. I say, fine, nobody should believe in fake news, and fake news is an offensive term to journalism. Fine. Everything on CNN is absolutely true. And everything on Fox News is absolutely true. Find me one person that will agree with both those statements. Find me one person. You can't because it goes down partisan lines.
Well, and
know that full.
Yeah, there's almost nobody out there that reports just straight up fact. Like here, we are here, and you are seeing, a man walking down the street. No, there's usually context around it, and depending on the news outlet, depending on the person, and I guess so my point is, just having been in media for so long, when I hear people refer to the media as a monolithic entity that is conspiring against everyone. Right. The reason why I have trouble with that with media is because there's too many poor reporters. There's too many reporters getting hired and fired and all that. And so I get it. It maybe you would say oh well, a media conspiracy would only happen maybe at the upper levels of everything going on, and that's how come you don't have a photographer that gets fired and is now angry and is going to spill the beans about a secret that he knows about. So here's what so one thing that you've mentioned, and by the way, I'm a big science fiction fan. So
me too.
Even a lot of the photos we show, it reminds me of Ringworld, the Ringworld series that I watched. And so just the idea that there could be like non-traditional shapes out in space that can support life, and it was always a fun thing for me and because it piqued my curiosity and my sense of science, even because it was always brushing up against science, right?
Right.
So one thing that you mentioned that because I like to keep an open mind, I also have a lot of fun. I think this is a lot of fun talking about, right? For me personally. And so it doesn't mean that I subscribe to it, but I enjoy these kinds of conversations. And so the thing that I would say is, one thing that you mentioned when Eric mentioned the lava or the magma underneath, and you were saying, and I understand from a flat Earth perspective, I understand how that would work, but you had mentioned that we are controlling that. And so what I sort of goes from is the idea that this could be, aliens that set this up a long time ago, or God, depending on who you want to, from a flat Earth perspective, no matter how you want to say it, it sort of came to be, and maybe we don't know that, right? That's part of the mystery.
Right.
But once we're starting to actually control elements as like the human populace, and even from down to NASA and everything else, like it just strikes me that it's one of those things. It's like as soon as two people know, it's not a secret anymore, right? Like one person is a secret.
Yeah, the Ben Franklin thing. How do you keep a secret between three people? You kill two of them. Yeah.
Right, and so how do you keep a secret with hundreds and thousands of people over the long run?
It's that actually is not as hard as you might think, because again, that's a good question, because people say it's too big. There's too many people that would have to know, scientists and pilots and everybody at NASA and everybody at every space organization. It's like, no, you treat it kind of like Capricorn 1, the movie from the late 70s, which is the only guys that need to know are the telemetry guys. Seriously, everybody at NASA doing their job. They make fuel systems, they polish capsules, they sew this, they do HR, they mop the halls. I don't know. But the only guys, they can do whatever they want, and you can launch rockets, and those rockets can go up. But once they get out of visual range, that's the important stuff. That's the telemetry. Those are the only guys that really have to know anything. The rest of it is just size. I mean, every pilot I've talked to, none of them ever thought about it, because it's too big. It's too physically big. So 99% of the people that work in a space organization, they don't know anything. Most astronomers and astrophysicists don't know anything. I mean, I've heard stories about radio telescope operators that have met untimely demises over the last 20 years. Of course, you'd have to keep them, somewhat secret. I treat it kind of like the movie 2012. Where you can keep a secret if you want, if the secret is big enough. And the reason why you'd want to keep the secret is because, again, potential shockwaves, not just educationally, which would be nightmarish, but economically, and the big one, of course, is the spiritual side of things. You're talking about most of the people in this world are tied to one of the 5 major religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And you're asking them to show restraint against science that's beating them over the head with textbooks for the last 5 centuries. It's tough. It's tall order. You don't necessarily want to do that. So yeah, you can keep a secret. I mean, this is different from the Manhattan Project, where you had hundreds of thousands of people building the atom bomb, and you compartmentalized it to where actually people were surprised. It's like, wow, we have an atom bomb, right? Because they didn't know exactly what they were doing. In this case, all you had to do was seal off the outer edge and the upper edge, and the rest of it kind of works out for itself. Civilians can only go 10 miles high in a civilian airplane, and Antarctica is locked down because of the Antarctic Treaty, and space is more or less military. I mean, out of the 500 people that even claimed to have been to space, I think 3 of them were actually civilians. The rest were military. I mean, somebody asked me recently, I know there's only so much time we have, but I'll keep going if you want to keep going. Which is, somebody asked me, because I was interviewing Terry Virts, one of our astronauts, and the host was saying, "Are you calling Terry a liar?" I said, "Look, I'm not saying that Terry, being an astronaut, is a bad guy. I'm saying that he's a soldier. He works for the United States military. In fact, he's a colonel. You don't make full bird colonel unless you know how to keep a secret. I'm not saying he's a terrible person. I'm saying he has to follow orders, even if he wanted to say something he couldn't, because treason is completely different than being sued. Treason is something you don't walk away from." There you go. Sorry, my little rant.
Mark, I know that we've gone a little bit over an hour, and we do try to, to
we can do whatever you want.
I'm trying to think of some more questions.
No, so Mark, I gotta, it's been really interesting seeing the comments that have been coming through as the show goes on, because there's folks that find it interesting. There's some folks that are like, I'm not necessarily interested, although we're still hearing them say that in the comments. And there's been a few little mini fights in the comments between folks that feel very strongly one way or another about this. And so for me, I think that this is
I can't even think of nothing.
Well, you thought of way more than I thought that you would. You actually, once we got going, I could, Eric, I thought he was getting some of his questions out of the comments, and he wasn't. A lot of these were just things that he was.
You did good. You did good, Eric. I honestly, I thought you were reading them through the comments because you had some good stuff. And again, this is a really polarizing topic. As producers, I learned quickly. As producers told me, it doesn't matter whether you love or hate a topic as long as you're engaged in it. And I have never seen a topic.
So what about Albert Einstein? How do you feel about him?
I don't hate him. No, it's a good
he said a lot of stuff about space and gravity and all that good stuff.
He did, but his tools were limited. I am not saying that.
But they come out to be true though.
His theories on light may be true, but it doesn't mean that space is true. And by the way, I'm not saying that I'm smarter than Einstein or Stephen Hawking.
He just did this. So did you hear about the two black holes? When two black holes collide, they create
gravitational waves.
They create,
Yeah, I've heard about that. I also know that particular study, their grant was just about up. They were just about to have their
Space Voyager? What about Voyage 1 and Voyage 2 that's traveling through space?
No, it's okay. It's okay. Every probe that we send out, whether it's Gemini, Mercury, Apollo, Voyager, what were some of the others? Pioneer, some of the other ones that were sent out there, especially but the early Voyagers, used in Star Trek movies. Did we send rockets up? Yes. Did those probes go anywhere? No. You got to remember that NASA was created for one reason and one reason only. And same thing with the Apollo program.
Saying they sent those up there and they just stopped.
He's saying they didn't even really send them up there.
They didn't go anywhere. And I don't
still getting updates from them. So you saying that's BS?
Yeah, he's saying
this is BS. It's just, come on. Did the Mars rover? Okay, I'll give you a quick one, real fast. We'll forget about the Mars rover with all their HD footage or anything else is being shot and sent back from Pluto. I'll give you some quick tech stuff, which is the Apollo. You can take any Apollo photograph and you'll see that wonderful little satellite dish, that's pointing back towards the Earth. This is not secret classified technology. This was 1969 technology. The VHF transmitter that was being used had maybe a range. Remember, it was battery powered. Radio stations can't broadcast very far. And this thing was battery powered, had maybe a range of 50 miles, maybe. And even then, you'd be lucky if you get Morse code. And this thing was sending 10 frames of color video a second and two-way communications, and it was pinpoint perfect. No, we didn't have the tech back then. Now, do we have the tech now?
Meteors? What about meteors hitting the Earth?
It's in your head, isn't it? It's never going away, is it?
How can meteors hit the Earth?
Meteors are good. No, as a matter of fact, meteors was one of the first questions that was ever brought up to me, and it wasn't even one that I included in the clues. Meteors are artificial. Do they have something to do with the structure and the builders? Yeah, sure. My friend said it's like throwing rocks into an aquarium. That's all you need. A high-speed rail gun, some metallic ore. Make sure you don't aim at any cities, which is why that one in Russia a few years ago got a little close. But I always think it's interesting that no one can capture any footage of a meteor landing, ever. You think that especially like right now with 6 billion smartphones. The what?
But there's
not after the fact. Not after the fact. Now happening. Why don't
there's people that find meteors all the time?
No,
and they sell them.
Not finding the meteors. Actually, show me one that actually lands. Like, show me the impact. Show me a video of a meteor actually hitting something.
Well, I mean, you can never. Well, explain the shooting star then.
What? Shooting stars, same sort of thing. Eventually, remember, meteors do hit.
It's just
and we have 6 billion smartphones. And remember, it's also got, if you believe in the mass thing, which I do, it's got 3/4 of a chance of hitting water. Nobody on a boat ever has seen a meteor, follow this sucker down. You didn't have to watch it through a tree line and hit the water. I believe in meteors. I do. I think it's also fascinating, though, that we can't find any meteor strikes in real time. Fascinating.
I think it's kind of hard to catch a meteor when it's random. I mean, it's coming from space.
Again, back in the day, when barely anyone had movie cameras, but now, heck, we photograph everything.
There's meteors that orbit our solar system. How do you?
Well, he's saying that
don't get too locked into that solar system thing, man.
He's saying that the people that are seeing those and reporting on them are part of the conspiracy.
Let me give you a quick quote. You're gonna like this. Ready? Okay, so there was a quote from George Orwell back in 1946, and he was not a flat earther, but his quote was perfect in my opinion, which was he was talking about the responsibility of science, why people believe what science tells them, and he said, if you ask anybody on the street, you say, how do you know the world's a globe? Their first instinct, their first immediate knee-jerk response is, what are you talking about? We know it's a globe. It's been proven. It's a given. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. And you say, and then you go, really? How do you know that? How do you know it's a globe? Remember, this was 1946. NASA wasn't even founded until 1958. How did everybody in 1946 know it was a globe? They didn't know. You were told. That's the big difference.
I could be like the square is flat. I could be like the world is square now.
You could if you wanted to.
And say each side is a season.
Come up with something for
the square switches. You go from one square to the next. That's one season to the next.
But then when you start talking it out, there'd be logic.
No, I know. It's again.
Coming up with it.
It's all right, but there's a line from the Truman Show. In fact, I'll give you two quick examples. Line from the Truman Show was easy, which was, we believe the world that is presented to us. When we're children, we do not believe in lies. Nobody ever lies to us ever. I mean, hell, we believe in Santa Claus. There was a wonderful movie which I talked about in the clues called, forget about the Truman Show, called The Village, which was an M. Night Shyamalan movie, which was basically some very rich people that wanted to keep their kids away from crime, bought a wildlife preserve. They built a town circa 1800s. They put their kids in it, and they're saying, hey, we're living in the 1800s. Were they lying? Yes, they were. But here's the interesting part. When those parents finally got old and passed away, no one would be lying at that point. Those kids would have kids. Because all they'd said, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's monsters in the forest, so you have to stay in the town.
Yeah, so you're saying like everything is an opinion, man. There's nothing.
No. It's not an opinion, but we believe what we're told by people that we immediately think are more intelligent than ourselves. If you wear a lab coat, you are immediately more credible.
Yeah. So then who's true then? What's true?
Dun dun dun. There you go. You're absolutely right.
If you saying that people only trust the people that they heard from, well, then that's everybody, because
which is why you're absolutely right. Which is why I always say, like, look, do your own. Don't take whatever anyone says at absolute face value.
So is that why you're a flat earther? Because you just want to be the black sheep?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, I stumbled upon this. I really loved the globe. Heck, I used to collect antique globes and covered my wall with maps. I loved the globe. I think the globe was a really cool icon, and so I was very, very disappointed when I was kept looking at this again. Which the reason why the flat Earth spread, two reasons why the flat Earth has been spreading the way it has. One is because we can now explain a world model that is easier than the solar system, way easier, and people love easy, believe it or not. And the other one is something I absolutely just forgot because I was thinking like 5 different directions just now. Go ahead.
Oh no, well that's okay. I think we've really enjoyed talking with you. I know, actually, I think if we had the energy, we could probably do this for quite a few hours.
I got some more questions.
And I think it's interesting because there's folks out there who are well. I think what would make sense is to have you back on at some point, and we can, because what I see with Eric is that you really have his wheels spinning, right?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what it is what you believe that made you believe flat Earth. That's why I asked you about aliens and stuff, because I'm like, if you believe that the Earth is flat, then you have to believe aliens.
No, I'll tell you how I got there. I got there because I tried. Everyone, the T-shirt literally reads, it's not my T-shirt, which is, I became a flat earther because I tried to disprove it. I went in trying to prove the globe. And that's, again, what you and anyone listening will try to do. It's like, okay, how can you prove the globe in a court of law? And you'll try it, and you'll try it, and you'll try it, which loops me all the way back around to, can I prove a flat earth? No, but I can create so much reasonable doubt in the globe. Create so much reasonable doubt. The only place you have left to turn is some other model that leans towards flat. And you say, well, reasonable doubt isn't enough. It's like, no, you know full well reasonable doubt gets people off every single day, all the time. And it works. And that's how I got there.
I got one question. Do you go to bars and bet people beer, like shots of alcohol that they can't prove you wrong?
No, well, no, that's not me. There's other people in our community, a lot of people that do street activism, and I took my turns at a few of those. That's not my role. There's other people that absolutely will do that though. They'll go. In fact, they won't go to bars. They'll just stand on street corners with sandwich boards and seriously just sit there. It's like, prove it's a globe, and you do that enough. Again, the enthusiasm of our particular community is really infectious. We have a 99% retention rate, believe it or not, meaning once you get in, if you're in, you never ever leave. And the reason is because we didn't tear down the globe for you. You tore it down yourself. That's the big part.
That's what I was trying to do to you today, and I can't find nothing.
Well, so Mark, we were having a contest today. We do giveaways every day on the show, and usually the giveaways are just sort of socially driven, like or share the show or tag a friend to come in kind of thing. But today we thought it would be fun because we wanted to encourage folks to ask questions, and we were passing some through. I know Eric asked a lot of his own questions. Yeah. But maybe because we thought it would be great. We wanted people to try to stump you. So first of all, I don't know. Did you feel like there was a tough question? And really, I guess that's a good question. Is
I'll put y'all questions in a comment now.
From a flat Earth perspective, is there a challenging question sometimes where all of a sudden
put your questions in?
Is there a more difficult question that you get sometimes? Like,
yeah. That's a good. The question that they'll say, okay, what's the easiest proof that you have, or what's the hardest? What's the thing you have that's the most difficult that flat earthers have to deal with? I'm not shy about saying it's the Antarctic sun. That is by far the most difficult question, because the Antarctic sun can't work with just one traditional light source. It can't. Because if the light is moving around over us like a mobile above a child's crib, then having 24 hours of sunlight in the North Pole, that's easy. All you have to do is get it closer, like a needle on a record player. But if it's on the outer edge, you can't do 24 hours of Antarctic sun. So you're either in one of two schools of thought. You either say, well, there is no 24 hours of Antarctic sun. I don't know if I believe that. I think it's actually real. But if it is, then it's because there's a secondary light source. There's something else. There's a lot of stuff going on in the sky that we still don't know. But that's probably by far the most difficult question that I get, which it isn't very often. Did you want me to pick a question for a winner?
Yeah, no, that would be great, and hopefully it's not Eric. Although Eric likes to joke with everyone that when they win a prize, he taxes them half of the prize. So,
nothing's ever free, Mark.
I think we might have just lost. Oh, we're back. We got you back. Sorry, but
ask your questions now, y'all.
We got you back.
Will I be able to see any of these questions?
No, I was just looking.
You probably have to paste them into Zoom group chat. Hang on one second.
Somebody said, "Who hires the guy that flips the switches for the moon and the stars? And where's the switch kept?"
I have so many.
Sorry, who? Wait, what was that question?
It said who hires a guy that flipped the switches for the moon and the stars, and where's the switch kept?
There you go. That's the best question right there. I can already tell you that's the best question. I have never gotten that question before, ever in 5 years.
He says you keep saying they built it, they keep this secret. Who is that?
Yeah. Again, so who built it? That's not as good as the whoever did the switches question. That's definitely the winner, because I
just know you guys won.
She's celebrating.
Heather
the
Brown won.
She's celebrating the comments.
That's by far the best. Who hired the guy? All right, again, who built the place? Who built the place? And when I talk about when I talk about the builders, there's only one of two roads you can go down. You're either talking an ancient civilization that's much older and much more powerful than ourselves. Who knows? Maybe it's a previous version of us, or it's the divine. either way, they're one step closer. But if it's an ancient civilization, they're one step closer to God's phone number than we are. The line I like to use is straight out of the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, which I think is so humbling, where, you know, she goes through this huge journey to get there. And then she asks, she's like, did you build all this? He goes, we didn't build it. We don't know who did. And it was just as simple as that, meaning whoever built this place, they may not even know more secrets of the universe than we do. We're all part of a process. And the follow-up question to that would be, what do I think is outside of this place? Do I think it's space? No, not at all. You don't need space. Even Carl Sagan said that the universe doesn't make sense because it's just so empty. It's 99.999% nothingness. I think that whatever's outside of this is the opposite of what is inside of it, which is if this world is 99% conflict, meaning it doesn't matter how beautiful, how powerful, how talented, how rich you are, you always find problems. You know, everybody's got problems, and no matter what, it's almost inescapable. You know, think of somebody that has no problems. It's impossible. Even mortality catches up with everybody. I think if this world is 99% conflict, I think whatever's outside of here, if you want to call it nirvana, Shambhala, heaven, so on and so on, I think it's 99% unlimited. So.
What level of education do you have there, Axon?
You're very well spoken.
I was thrown out of college my senior year for manufacturing explosives on campus.
What?
How's that?
Was that the Anarchist Cookbook? Did you have the Anarchist Cookbook?
No, I was just a big fireworks guy. I live up in Seattle, Washington, and so there's a lot of Native American reservations up here. And they have different laws when it comes to fireworks, and so someone has to make stuff for them. And so I was young and stupid, and made a lot of heavy stuff for them.
Do you believe in Bigfoot?
Yeah, well, I do. By the way, if you can open your mind up to flat Earth, there's nothing you'll shoot down, really. Now, there's a lot of conspiracies I like more than others. Do I think that Bigfoot had Elvis's baby? No, probably not. But do I think that Bigfoot maybe exists? Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm up in the Northwest. There's a lot of, and the reason I say that, I'll give you a quick example, would be the billy ape, which is, look it up. It was only discovered like 5 years ago. 6 foot tall chimpanzee down in South America that was very good at hiding from people, very skittish around people. And then no one believed it. And then fine. And by the way, the Bigfoot thing, that goes into the whole cryptozoology thing. Don't forget that just about every weird species we thought was a myth. So the giant panda was a myth. The giant anaconda was a myth. The giant squid, which we still have never caught one of the big ones because they swim way too deep. Our best subs can't catch them. You know, we can't get to these things, and they're freaking huge. And the only reason we even know they exist would be the giant sucker marks on the side of sperm whales, the size of garbage cans. Or my favorite, look it up, the coelacanth fish. People, whenever anyone says, oh, science is absolutely right, look up the coelacanth fish. Coelancanth. It's a very unattractive fish with a bunch of extra fins. Thing has been dead for 70 million years, right? Extinct for 70 million years. Except that they caught one off the coast of South Africa in 1940, and then Mozambique, and then Madagascar. And finally, National Geographic has you swimming around with them. Well, how did science get it absolutely wrong in that case? Every scientist in the world would have been absolutely dead wrong. How'd they get it wrong? Because they saw the fossil records and they stopped looking. They stopped doing their own research. It's like, well, there's the fossil record. The fish must be extinct. No, it's not. So there you go.
Go ahead.
Oh, somebody asked if you own a telescope.
And that, by the way, is a little dig when somebody says, he might as well have said, have you flown in an airplane?
No. Well, I think it's interesting though, because I would think that flat earthers would actually be
try to prove themselves wrong.
You don't need telescopes anymore. All you have to use a digital camera with a high-end zoom.
Got it.
So yeah. I mean, all you have to do, telescopes they're just old school now. I mean, seriously, just get a Nikon P1000 with like 125 power zoom into the stars. The stars look like they're underwater, which is a whole nother thing. But I know what you mean. Look, I've argued with astronomers that said, look, I've seen the moons of Jupiter.
So,
and speaking of partying, So
Yes.
a lot of our audience is from the cannabis industry, and so we've had folks, and they're not asking this as in a backhanded way. There's a lot of folks out there that I think would love to hang out with you, but they're asking if you consume cannabis.
I have. I had a girlfriend up in British Columbia who was a big cannabis user. She used it in just about every form you could think of, and she kind of introduced me to the whole thing. That just doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, yeah.
What about psychedelics? I know you do that. You have to. There's no way you don't.
No, people. It's really strange you would say that. That would be one of the winning questions right there. Which is, people wouldn't give me drugs when I was growing up. I was always pretty eccentric, and they refused to give me drugs. They're like, "Yeah, you don't get drugs." I go, "Why not?" And seriously, I was really disappointed because I always wanted to do shrooms. I have done very, very few drugs.
Well, you should definitely come take a trip down here. Hang out with us. We love to kick it with you sometime. I know I would.
Yeah, actually, and
I've drank my share of things, but very few drugs have ever been offered my way.
I would love to get you on a psychedelic trip.
I know, it'd probably be really, really freaky.
Hell yeah, you'd be fun as hell to kick it with.
Mark, it was such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for spending so much time with us today. I know our audience really loved it. Even the folks that were, that you didn't convince in the comments, we had folks that were saying to thank you. For and that there's a lot of folks that appreciate the fact that
you changed some people's minds.
Well, and just it's you've got conviction in your beliefs, and it comes through, and people love your energy, and we really appreciate you spending so much time with us today.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to all the audience people for listening.
Yeah, and Mark, thank you. And for folks that want to get a hold of Mark, I think the best place is YouTube, right?
Yeah. Just type in easiest way would be just type in Flat Earth Mark.
Great, Mark Sargent. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one, man.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Wow.
Well, how many people believe in flat Earth?
Do you? Do you actually believe it now?
Nah, I don't believe it. I do got some questions though about the round earthers out there.
So it's really interesting.
My man's had an argument for everything. It didn't matter what it was.
So that's the interesting thing, though, and
you couldn't tell him shit.
When people are, with the idea of believing something that doesn't really have any proof, it's.
I got some questions for some NASA people and some astronomers and stuff, but
I hear him that it's tough for people to prove that it's a globe, but it's also clearly difficult to prove that it's flat. And I would think that it's way easier to prove that it's flat.
He needs to go on a trip.
Globe.
Change his mind, see what his brain is.
But I gotta say that Mark, it was actually a lot of fun. And by the way, I saw, for those of you out there,
Rebecca, he's never did psychedelics.
I think that there were a few people in the audience that kind of were expecting us to tear Mark apart. And
shit, I was trying to. Y'all see me, y'all heard me. I was coming with straightforward questions. No getting around it. I just want to know, and he had an answer for it, which hurt.
But
shit was hurting.
So, by the way, he even admitted though that there's a few things that sometimes it's a little tough for the flat earthers to account for everything. And he was saying the biggest thing is the South Pole sunlight,
which makes sense because if the Antarctic is on the outside, it would have 24 hours of sunlight.
No, Jason in the comments is saying that we can't beat Mark, and I didn't actually expect to be able to because the guy interviews with people.
I wouldn't expect him to beat him, but I was just hoping to just get him to be like. He did kind of pause when I asked him one question. He did pause for a while.
There was a couple he liked here,
but I think it's because he was trying to look up the answer because I think he got an answer for everything, but he just can't remember it. Because I can imagine you trying to
remember
every little thing, make sure you saying it right. So I knew I stumped him at some part, and he was
So for those of you who didn't hear, we give away stuff every day. Today's contest was Stump the Flat Earther.
Heather won.
Yeah, Heather Marie.
Heather Marie
no,
won.
Hold on, no. There's more than one Heather Marie. We got to be careful.
Nah, it's one.
It's the Heather
it's
Marie
more.
Brown.
Yes. Yeah.
Heather Marie Brown, who also won the other day. She's a winner again.
No, he answered your question. He just said that your question was the best. Yeah,
well,
he said
that was our agreement with Mark. Mark knew we were going to do this, the contest, and he was a really good sport about it. But also, I think it was good because it makes people want to watch and ask questions and stuff.
Hey, that is true, Jason. NASA stands for never a straight answer.
Y'all gotta start your local.
Jason
chapter.
is Jason Flat Earth Tourist.
better start your local chapter.
Flat Earth recruited tourist. That's what
I think a lot of people wanted us to be hard on him, and that's people aren't going to want
it to be hard. I was trying to, but
we were asking some
he's too positive.
But but people wanted us to be angry, sort of angry. So Heather Marie Brown, you don't even know what you won. You won a Beantown Greentown hat. You won 2 bags of CBD dog treats. Eric's going to make you a tinfoil hat, apparently. He said he's going to make you one, so that's going to be included.
It take 29 to 30 business days to ship. So.
And you're going to get a bit of Beantown Greentown flour, if you know what we mean.
Some dandelions and roses.
For all the rest of you who know what we mean, you need to keep coming back every day because we do giveaways every day.
We give away roses, dandelions. We give away what's another good flower?
Sunflowers.
Or
is that stupid because it has the word flower in it?
We give away all of them good kind of flowers.
Yeah, we were just because for a lot of you, you've never heard him tell his thing, and so it's fair to let him say what he wants to come on and say. And so I think the first half an hour or so, we tried to let him go through a lot of the basic stuff that flat earthers end up talking to people about. And so, and then we had our questions, and we were.
JT said he was in the Boston Globe for Flat Earth for a full page.
No, you guys don't understand that he's one of the most famous dudes on Earth for Flat Earth. He's one of the most famous dudes on Flat Earth.
Jason said he was.
Oh, Jason was. Yeah, so we're really psyched that Mark joined us. Thank you. And so, we had another marathon show today.
Oh, Heather, you're so nice.
Well over 2 hours.
For all my fellow flat earthers.
By the way,
you got a fan.
You're a fan?
I'm a fan of flat earthers. I don't say I believe in flat earth, but I'm a fan of y'all. Y'all got a different way of thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's fun, and usually flat earthers. It's not.
I'm just saying you can't be a flat earther and don't believe in aliens and don't believe in
throwing stuff at you when you believe in the globe. They're not angry.
Nah, that dude was chill. I was trying to pressure him. He wasn't budging.
He actually. So I got to tell you, I think he has other subject matters that he likes talking about, not just flat Earth. I think he would love to talk about aliens at some point. We should get somebody on here who knows their stuff about aliens. What about that pilot that went on the Joe Rogan show? Or the other dude?
Shoot, Joe Rogan paid them boys.
He did? Yeah, but now they got nothing.
Don't matter. He paid them. They coming on another show. They need to get paid. And guess what? I'm not paying for none of y'all. You can kiss my butt.
Congratulations to Heather Marie Brown. You won again. All you guys need to do is keep coming back and watching every day.
Oh, she won again? Sorry, taxes go up when you win twice.
Yeah, and yes, props to
48%
for being committed to what he.
My head they hit 72.
What he believes in.
73%.
We appreciate everyone sticking around and watching. We know you enjoyed it, but we really appreciate and shout out to Lady Dave who showed up. Shout out to all of our new viewers. We appreciate it. We're here every single morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So whatever time it is now where you are, this is around the time when about a couple hours earlier. We go on live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and a couple other places. And shout out to our shout out to some of the folks that are watching on YouTube and Twitch. We really appreciate you guys.
Amazing show,
Come back tomorrow,
JT.
10 a.m. tomorrow. I'm not telling you who's on. It's still going to be cool.
Pay them taxes.
And you're going to win stuff. Just come back. Come back long enough. Keep watching. You're going to win.
Pay them taxes.
Simple. What else do you want to do right now? What are you thinking?
I'm tired of talking to y'all, but I did learn something new today. I learned how to be a flat earther. And we coming to the end of the show, 'cause we really gotta go, and we don't want to talk to y'all no more. Peace.